Welcome back. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting, and you are listening to the 43rd episode of the Organizational Excellence Podcast. In the theme of the last few podcasts, I've been talking about creating a new great 2020 for yourself and your team. And recently I had someone who had recommended a book on ADHD. And in listening to the book, it got me thinking about some things. And then I started reading up a little bit more online. And essentially, when we think about folks who've had ADHD, we may find people that we admire, or we may find people that might just be a little bit different, or they may annoy us, or they may make us stand back in awe. It could be any number of reactions. Not that those are the only reactions, but it could be any number of reactions. And so I went in and I started looking at famous people who have had ADHD or been diagnosed, and even in this book, they don't particularly care for the word diagnosed. People who have been identified as having ADHD. Just four of them that I picked were Michael Phelps, Richard Branson, Walt Disney, and Albert Einstein. And the more and more I've listened to this book and read a little bit more about it, I believe when you look at why some of these people have been successful, so this podcast is not necessarily about ADHD, but maybe as a little bit of a springboard for this topic. What they've identified with folks who have ADHD is the fact that they can literally, in a moment, decide, I can make that happen. They'll just agree that something is going to change, or they're going to incorporate something, they're going to create something brand new from scratch. They just decide in a moment's notice, I can do that. And one of the things that these folks have been, when they have ADHD, is that sometimes they view it as also a superpower. It's not something that you get diagnosed with and you need to medicate for, but it can literally be a superpower for certain people. When you go back to these people like Michael Phelps, Richard Branson, Walt Disney, and Albert Einstein, think about the things that they have accomplished. Michael Phelps won more gold medals, I believe, than anyone collectively, and I think he got, someone will correct me, but I believe 8 medals in the one Olympics. And then Richard Branson, think about the airline that he's created and how different that is from so many of the other airlines. You think about what Walt Disney created from nothing, and if you even go back and read up about how many times he was turned down or turned away, but he still kept at it. And you also think about Albert Einstein and the mind and what he brought to the world. So think about this superpower for a moment and think about how others, or maybe how you might process and look at things. If someone says that we want to increase productivity or production for your practice or for yourself, we might start coming up with all the reasons why that's not going to happen. We start coming up with all the reasons why this won't work. Instead, imagine if you were able to put a cape on and say, I now have the ADHD superpower. Imagine if you put that cape on and we said, we want to increase your productivity by 40%. Imagine having the power to say, I can do that. Imagine having the mindset that no big deal. I will work through anything. And that was one of the things that I learned about Einstein, is the fact that he would flat out say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I just keep working until I fix the problem. And that's where I think ADHD and that superpower, if we could all acquire some of that, if it was bottled and sold to where we could all take a sip of this, is that it would give us the ability to say, I will do it, and I will figure out the rest as I go along, because that's what happens anyway. So imagine if we were able to get rid of all the obstacles and everything else, all the other excuses that we tend to come up with, and just turn this into something that we just agree that I'm going to make this happen and I will figure out the rest as I go along. So think of 2020, think of yourself as having that cape, or at least the bottled ADHD that you might be able to take periodically just to remove the obstacles. And I'm pretty sure that when you start making your goals for 2021, they would be vastly different from the ones that you would create today. So that was your 43rd Organizational Excellence Podcast. I'll talk to you again soon.